Good morrow to you all. You have fallen on bad times.
Brought to you by the Royal Holloway Shakespeare Society.
You join me, Theo Dudridge.
And me, Lynn Biles, as we bear some bardy truths.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Bad Times. This week we are joined by the incredible Kerryn Frean. Say hi,
Aww,
Kerryn.
Hello. I wasn't expecting to be called incredible. Hi.
Hello, Kerryn. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, busy times ahead.
Oh yeah,
busy
I feel
times
that.
ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As you don't know, Kerryn is an MA student currently, so dealing with all of that fun stuff.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Fun stuff is definitely a way to describe it. It's
I mean, degree stuff can be fun. Busy, stressful.
Yeah, it is very fun, but it's still a master's degree, so I am still flying by the seat of my pants. But other than that, I'm having a great time.
You'll have to see it. So Kerryn Frean has done many things at this uni through her undergrad years and even MA stuff now, which we'll get onto in the episode in a bit. She was the artistic director for Coriolanus in her second year. She was the publicity officer for Drama Society in her third year. In first year, she was in 0-100 Hours, A451, and has done various things for student workshops, MAP B. She directed 5 Women Wearing the Same Dress in her second year, which was an incredible production.
Thank you.
She also performed in The Fever, directed by James Shannon for Ruckus Theatre Company, and you've also done 2 VR workshops with Nexus and Darkfield. So, as mentioned earlier, you've been involved with a number of different societies in your time at Royal Holloway. How have you found your experience with all of these throughout your undergrad years at uni?
Well, I don't know how to explain this. It's a great experience, regardless of anything that might be going on within your actual degree. It's a great experience to get involved with any society, even if you're into witchcraft or the occult. We have a society for that. If you're into flipping learning Italian, we have such a variety of societies. So I feel like regardless of what you're into, you should always get involved. With performing arts, it's such a different experience though, especially at a university level, just because there's so much that goes into actually learning about teamwork and how committees run and what exactly what influences committees' decisions and what influences a crew's decision and a team's decision. It is a very enlightening experience and a very interesting experience, going into this type of field. What exactly are theatre companies looking to do, and looking at it from the microcosm of a university society. So I always recommend, when undergrads are like, oh, I don't know exactly what to do because I have all this free time and I haven't done this, that, or the other. I'm always like, get involved with a society, regardless of what it is. You need to have that experience. It's almost a must for university.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Claim and make the argument that societies help your mental health, and I do think there are aspects that do, and I'm not arguing that it doesn't. I would more say, instead of looking at it from, oh, I want to help my mental health, or I want to have something that's completely stressless, rather look at it as, I want to have an experience that's outside my degree, that is something that's passion filled. It helps your mental health, but it's by no means not stressful. I am speaking as someone who has taken on small roles in MAP B, which is literally a few weeks of rehearsals. And been like, oh, this will be a nice little thing. No, it is nice. It's nice to be on it's nice to be on a stage. It's nice to be involved with a team, but it is stressful. And I don't think anyone should tell you that it's not because that's false advertisement. If you're going to get involved in a society and you're going to take on, you know, some of the responsibility of doing something and working in a team,
Yeah.
be ready for the work that's involved. It's great work, and I'm glad I did it, but my God.
I mean, you know, because you also directed a show, and if anyone here watching this or is looking into being involved on a show crew, either next year or next term or for something completely different, is a lot of commitment to sort of do. If you want, do you want to give a little insight as to how you found directing a show in your second year?
Well, you know, I adored it. Honestly, I did. But like I said, it was incredibly stressful. There were times where I genuinely had like 50 things to do in one day. And the thing is, I was fully prepared for that. Because I had worked with directors before. I had worked with people here at this university who had told me they had woken up at like 10 a.m. on a usual day or 9 a.m. to start their day, and then they were greeted with like 15 messages from mainly, I would like to point out, their DSM, or, you know, but that, you know, that's part of the role, it's part of it. You have to prepare to do that. So that's rule number one for me, is if you really think, I want to do this, I'm a little bit of a tough love type of person. So I always start with the bad news, which is it's a lot of work, and do be prepared for it to be a lot of work. Even if it's remote, it is a lot of work. And from then, if you're like, yes, I can do it, I can do it, great. You've got the hard part down. You've got down the expecting to do a lot. What is it that you want to do with the piece that you have? With 5 Women, I wanted to do a comical production that hit on a lot of dark topics for women, and wasn't necessarily the most politically correct. I'm going to be the first one to say that 5 Women is not politically correct. I am fully going to be the one that says that. And the reason why I still did it was because I saw this play more as a microcosm of how women were treated during the 90s and how they treated each other during the 90s. And that was why I wanted to do the play. From there, I built off of my idea, okay, that's why I want to do it. What theatrical decision should I then make to make that the product of what I do? You know, I wanted it to be a microcosm that showed how women were treated and how they treated each other. Realism, then, because I want them to be realistic characters. And then from there, you just do the work. You get the cast, you make the bid, you get the team, and from there, you make your decision on all these aspects, and then you bring your actual initial idea of what you wanted to do to life. And it, in my head, once you do that, once you make that first decision, your final product or productions will be the most succinct thing that you can create, and the most like theatrically effective thing you can create.
You raised some excellent points there. I think coming up with any show, there's always a reason, there's always a drive as to why this show at this time. And I remember seeing 5 Women, and quite a lot of people who I was with were like, this is one of the best shows I've seen on campus. I think because what worked really well is you had a small cast, and you could really focus on the individual characters and really kind of get the most out of them in the space that you had and time that you had, which I think worked really well. And speaking of getting the most out of characters in I say a short space of time, but just getting the most out of a character. Last year you were involved in a one act play, The Fever by Wallace Shawn, which was directed by James Shannon in the comfort of our own student home. So this play was rehearsed and performed sort of during both lockdowns. You experienced both online rehearsals before we moved in together as a group, and rehearsals kind of in person in the home, and then it was like eventually recorded in the home. So what was that experience like for you, having to kind of come up with this character, but like develop this character one-on-one with your director? Like, what was that experience like for you as a performer?
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, firstly, I would like to thank you for the compliment on Five Women. I appreciate that. It was a weird experience. I'm very honest. It was a very weird experience, not because of how the director was going about it. James Shannon is a very good director. I would say a very talented director, and especially how he approached the entire thing, like how he went about all of his decision making, made it so that I would be comfortable and I would attack this performance in the right way, and I would learn the lines, and I would do, it was 19 minutes of dialogue, all in all of which that I halfway through learned I was dyslexic, so there was a lot going on at the time.
That was
I learned I was dyslexic, and also there was a lockdown, and then there wasn't a lockdown, and then there was another one. It was a lot. And, you know, there was a lot going on in both of me and James's personal lives. And then the actual performance itself took 7 months of preparing and honing. And, you know, it was strenuous. But how we went about it was, the Fever is based off of a person, originally a man, but because it was me playing it, they decided we should just make them very gender ambiguous. And to be honest, the script itself was gender ambiguous, so it didn't really matter. But this woman is learning that everything that she believes in her middle class life is not actually true, and that she needs to rethink everything of, you know, politically and you know, it's a communist, what's it called? A communist speech. So there's a lot of socialism that goes into it and all of that, you know, stuff, which during the wake of the BLM protests and Boris Johnson's, what's it called? I believe he was put into office, not put into office, but put into the role as prime minister during this time, whilst we were developing the script. It was such a weird time to be making theatre like that, and then presenting it and putting it on a Zoom production within my own living room. It was, honestly, this is going to sound very dramatic. I don't care. It did change my outlook. It really did. It changed who I am and how I think about things, because it was such an innately personal performance because of just the situations we were in. And it was enlightening. I know I use that word a lot, but I don't know how else to describe it as as anything else but enlightening.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, being there throughout the process as well, like, it was great to kind of see your kind of character development and the overall kind of piece kind of go as well. I mean, a bunch of technical stuff kind of was thrown our way throughout kind of how we would actually put this piece together. I know at one point we talked about garden performances.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's like a garden tour. We tried to do like a montage recording thing. We then ended up doing it as one long recording, like National Theatre style with multiple camera angles, which is what we went for in the final thing. But yeah, it was a really nice production to be a part of. It's definitely something to kind of include on the old CV when it comes around. This was all done during your third year as well. So I remember, like, you had a lot going on sort of degree wise. Obviously we both shared Shakespeare on camera as a module that we did. I've just done it, you did it last year. But another thing which I know you were working quite a lot on in your third year apart from FYP, was your special project, your third year special project, which for you was adapting H.P. Lovecraft's In the Mountains of Madness into a VR performance, a VR experience. What was that process like for you, adapting this story? And how did you kind of come up with the concept and eventually devise it? I say devise it, conceptualize it and go into, because it was a detailed ass script. Let me tell you that.
It started firstly with just a love for H.P. Lovecraft's work, not him, his work. For anyone,
make that very clear.
Yes, I need to be very clear. That man is a terrible man, and I will go on record and say it. Kerryn Frean said in 2022 that she hates H.P. Lovecraft but loves his work. But he, created a lot of work, and he invented cosmic horror. Cosmic horror, for people who do not know, is horror that's related with existentialism, essentially looking at who are we in the eyes of, of our big cosmic place on this realm. Like, who are we? We are specks of dust in a space that is huge and expanding, and it was horror laced with that. And he has created a bunch of creatures and monsters to get this point across, and some of his planets from it have come from from that initial idea as well. The most famous being Cthulhu. Yeah. If you do not know, Cthulhu comes from this man's brain. At the Mountains of Madness, I, learned about At the Mountains of Madness when I was reading through my giant book of all of his completed fictions, which I'm literally staring at right now. But I was flicking through it, and I saw At the Mountains of Madness. It's one of his most known pieces, and it is set in Antarctica. This man, he wrote during the 1920s, and going to Antarctica and going to these kind of remote places was a new concept for sure, even though there were already people there, but we're not, going to get into that too much. But, from a Westerner's standpoint, going to those areas was a new concept for them. And there was definitely some horror related to it. There was definitely some fear of what is there, what do we know about these areas? We don't know much. It's it's the 1920s. They didn't know a huge amount. So he wrote this, and he had this idea that, spoilers, there's aliens there, and people are these what's it called, these university staff are going there, and they're looking, and they see the aftermath of an alien abduction, essentially. And I loved it. I loved it, just because it was looking at, instead of the initial abduction, it was looking at the aftermath of it, which I never even considered. Like, it was looking at how an alien civilization would leave their entire livelihoods, and how they would evolve in a remote place on Earth, and how all of that would look to just, three men visiting Antarctica. And from that, I kind of questioned, why hasn't HB's work been done, or rather Lovecraftian horror been done in a theatre setting? And I found out it's because it's really difficult. As I said, cosmic horror is all about existentialism, and it's all about questioning who you are. And through books, that's pretty easy to do, because books are incredibly immersive. You can have it from your point of view. You are the guy that's in, the alien aircraft. You are the guy that's in Antarctica. But when you're watching a piece of theatre, you are not in it. You are watching it. It's the same with films. They find that they have a lot of difficulty with making films that are Lovecraftian horror as well. One of the most successful now is Lovecraft Country, and that's because they figured out how to do it whilst implementing kind of the racial aspects that H.P. Lovecraft ignored in his pieces. So I think it is a very, very good TV show. But regardless, there have been several attempts and there have been not many successful ones. So I was questioning, how do you add that immersive, aspect into theatre? And the best way is through VR. And I had this idea, kind of like London Dungeon, essentially.
Yeah.
But like a leveled up London Dungeon of, you have a headset wearer, you have 2 actors, and these actors are the original characters within the book. You are an added character, and you are looking at everything that they look at, and it ends how the book ends. And it is the best way, in my eyes, or at least in my eyes at the time, of making it as immersive as possible whilst still adding the horror aspect that is very successful within VR already.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's all incredible stuff. I was quite lucky enough to actually see at least a draft or maybe even the finished product of the script. And
I think you saw the finished one.
I think I saw quite a few versions, I think. I remember you having to color code a lot of things and break down certain points, but it was very technical. It wasn't just a case of you had fixed lines for the actors. There were like choices as well that you had to bear in mind, and options as well that could come up, and I guess describing the virtual environment that you had to set it in. So could you go into a bit more detail about what that process was like, trying to technically piece together this script?
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know how to explain this via audio. I'll try my best. I essentially had diagrams of where the actors had to go, and I did this, and these diagrams were what's it called? Like a floor map? A floor map? Yeah. Like when you're viewing a house, all those tenants out there, you know what I'm talking about. When you're viewing a house and you're looking at the floor map and you see, that's where the bedroom is. That's where the landing is. That essentially, I had to do that for every space that the actors would be in, and I had to color code it. This area is red, this area is pink, this area is green. And if the action was happening in that area, the text that I was using would be that color. So in the red area would be red text. And so I would say on the floor, there are doctor's notes, for example, and that would all be in red text. So it was a very colorful script, let's just say the least. And this was for aid of, this, I would say this is an industry standard, but the industry is so young, there isn't really a standard yet. Every company works differently on how they do this. I just found that this was the best that I could find, like the best method. And it was one that was used by a few VR creators already. So I decided that would work. And it was standard format of a script, just with a bunch of colors. Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. So hopefully that's clear.
What did you have to do in order to research before like setting it out in the way that you set it out?
I had to research how people in the 1920s visited Antarctica. Like I had to look at what they brought, what universities did when they visited Antarctica. Firstly, not many did. This was kind of like a false thing that HB had actually, I keep calling him HB, that Lovecraft had come up with.
Yeah.
And so I had to search up, the contextual things, especially related to an era that is definitely not now. I had to search 3D real time, which, to give a very brief synopsis, is essentially a lot of video game companies, Ubisoft included, Sony included, use 3D real time. It's motion capture. So people with like the ping pong balls and everything on them, who go in front of a camera, and then they capture their motion, literally. But then the director can see what they look like in game. So they actually can see them as the actor's moving. They can see it. It's like a live performance for the director that they then record and put in, you know, Uncharted or you know, Assassin's Creed. So, and this is something that's come about very actually Mandalorian is starting to use it. They're like one of the biggest names at the moment that used 3D real time. So it's definitely becoming like a thing that cinema is trying to actually incorporate into their practice. And I looked into that mainly because what if the monitor that the director was seeing was within the headset? So the actors are all live. They're all actually there. They can touch the person who's wearing the headset. They can touch it. They can move things around, and it is all VR, and it's all realistic VR. So the horror is so much scarier because you actually have been touched by this man. You actually have been like patted on the back, or, you know, given like the thumbs up to, so you know he's there. And then you see an alien behind him. That was something that I really wanted. Like, I really wanted the horror to be as horrific as possible, because I'm a maniac. No, because also it helps the cosmic horror, and that's why I wanted to do it. So I had to look into that aspect as well. What else did I look into? Oh, and then just, you know, formatting for actual VR scripts and how exactly people like Punch Drunk and like, what's it called? Like even London Dungeon or any of these immersive places, how do they actually set out scripts?
Yeah. No, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, you're currently studying an MA in immersive storytelling here at Royal Holloway. So with all kind of that in mind, and what you've sort of learned on the course so far last term and this term so far, what has that experience been like, and what sort of things have you had to do as part of the course?
Oh my God. Okay. So I had to make a 3D mesh of my face recently. That was fun. Woo! I made a 3D mesh of my face, and I added my own motion capture, so I was able to move it. I have written stuff. I've written more scripts. I've done a lot of lab work. So I've actually worked with the engineers within Royal Holloway to to create like what's it called, immersive technology. So actually looking at the equipment that people use within VR, and how exactly, you know, how exactly do they get artistically inspired, let's say. So that aspect of it, and also looking at actually developing my own skills. I've like I said, I made the 3D mesh of my face. I also wrote a VR adaptation of Eros and Psyche.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of my favorite things that I've done recently, and it's kind of like an animation style of it. So, you know, there's a lot of artistically looking at what VR can do, and why exactly does a creative choose VR.
That sounds absolutely incredible. And yeah, that really nicely leads me on to my next kind of creative question that I've got lined up for you.
Brilliant. I'm helping you. It's
you
great.
are, you are. It's a nice little segue. But yeah, with all that in mind, and also with your work having done your H.P. Lovecraft adaptation,
Yeah.
how would you go about potentially adapting a work of Shakespeare for a VR experience, either educational or as a performance, whatever you kind of want to do with the knowledge of Shakespeare that you have? Let's brainstorm some ideas.
Oh my gosh. So, well, I actually have worked. So you brought up the workshop that I did with Nexus. The workshop that I did with Nexus, we actually did a production of The Tempest. A very small production of The Tempest, let's say. It was one actress. She was playing Caliban, Miranda, and Ariel, and we switched between avatars. And the reason we did it was to kind of look at it of how can this be an educational resource, let's say for a class that was learning some sort of Shakespeare text, or how could this be used with theatre companies. So that's why we did it. So I have actually seen it done, and also looking at Dream by the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Okay.
That is, during 2021 they created a VR experience that people could view at home during lockdown that was based off of Midsummer Night's Dream's characters.
Oh, that's nice.
It is a really cool piece. I haven't been able to view it, but I've looked at stills of it, and it is very interesting. If I were to personally create something, I gotta think about this. I mean, I'm a sucker for King Lear, and I would love to, because King Lear, there is a lot of travel. You're going from the seas of some part of England to the middle of a field to then back like up south or wherever. It is a lot of traveling. So what I would really love is, like, with VR, being able to actually input that sense of travel through giving people, like, actually making them feel like they're actually there. I would also, firstly, creating anything for VR, there is so much you can do with location, and Shakespeare loved being in the middle of Europe, or he loved being like, oh, okay, guess what, we're in Germany now. Like, he loved it. So I think in that essence, you can, even if you're looking at how can I do a really realistic adaptation of Shakespeare, if you want to do it in VR and be in the middle of France, you can. And you would actually feel like you are in France. That's the beauty of it. What I would love to do is put people in impossible places. So you have that aspect of putting them in the middle of, like, realistic places. Imagine a production of The Tempest where you are, talking to you're not talking, but Ariel's talking to you. And then Ariel goes under the sea, sorry. But Ariel, dives into the sea and starts using their magic, and you are under the sea with Ariel. Or Ariel goes up high and flies above, the ship, and you are with Ariel. Or Caliban is digging into the earth, and he, digs himself so far underground, and you're with him. All of that stuff, I think, is so powerful. So I would love to look at The Tempest. I started it within that workshop. I would love to actually create something that looked at how, magic can be presented through an immersive experience.
That is incredible.
Thank you.
I think as well, with looking at The Tempest, there is so much potential to show, like, the whole shipwreck. Like, imagine experiencing the notions of, like, a shipwreck in VR.
Yeah.
You could have obviously the VR headset, but if you staged it in a place with, I say, from experiences of like 4D or 5D cinema where you're on like moving chairs or something like that, having like a moving stage so it like turns, it can like rock up and down. So it's almost like you're on something and you feel like you're being raised and lowered at the same time as you're in this experience. Like maybe having actors interact with you and seeing how that goes in that sense. But yeah, I think there's so much you can do, especially with technology and sort of what theatres have been able to do and what buildings have been able to do by adding and renovating things. If only money was not an issue. But yeah. But technologically, the potential to do all of that and still kind of drive home like different feelings that you wouldn't necessarily have been able to get by just reading or performing a text alone. It's very rare that you actually get to experience the events of a Shakespeare play. And I think, you know, a play like Midsummer, you have so many moments of just fun chaos, and you can actually just feel kind of at ease, at peace with what's going on around you, and you can laugh along with the hilarity and the chaos that's just going on stage. But with, you know, for example, the events of Macbeth, there's a lot of violence that's going on. Same with the events of like Macbeth or King Lear or Titus. There is just so much kind of death around, and just if you kind of marketed it right, you could really kind of drive home like a horror experience, similar to your Lovecraft concept. There's just a lot you can do with VR, and I think
like think about when you're playing, you know, Assassin's Creed, or you're like I mentioned Assassin's Creed or Uncharted. Those two come to mind a lot because you said shipwreck. When you see an actual shipwreck and actors reacting to that shipwreck, it's a completely different experience in theatre because you see actors reacting, but you don't actually see the shipwreck. And then let's say you watch film, yes, you see the shipwreck and actors reacting to it, but you're not interacting with it. Then to add even that, that's the magic of it. And I think that would be so cool for anyone that's watching Shakespeare, because Shakespeare, like you said, there's so much death and there's so much, you know, stuff that happens. Way to really summarize it. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Imagine actually being able to feel like, you know, you are a part of the world that Shakespeare has made.
That is, I think that's incredible.
Exactly.
Just I've run out of words, but yeah, no, absolutely, I completely agree with you. I think it not only would aid as a great kind of educational tool, because there's always that debate. I know one of the most frequently discussed topics in academic discussions as of late is like Shakespeare in schools. How did people's education of Shakespeare kind of differ? Was it effective? Was it not? I think VR and the way that technology is kind of evolving and advancing today, I think there is so much you can do with that as an educational tool to really kind of immerse people and get them to understand the goings on and the works of Shakespeare.
Exactly. And another thing, sorry, I could talk for forever. But another thing is, like, I think personally, and people can disagree with me if they would like, but I think that the reason that Shakespeare has stayed so alive in everyone's, you know, world, in the world of theatre, is the adaptations that come from Shakespeare. There are so many traditionalists who may disagree with me, and you know, I think there is something to be said about how he originally saw his work and how beautiful his words are, and we should look at that aspect of it. But the reason why it comes up a lot, there's a reason why there's so many productions of Macbeth, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, is the adaptations that come from it. And what is the best way to adapt, you know, a piece than actually using the technology that's available to us? You know, making an adaptation. You know, Royal Shakespeare Company has made an adaptation because of the political situations that we were all in, of, you know, being locked up, and also the fact that they had the technology. So why wouldn't we actually reflect on the work the world that we have.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's quite nice, once again, the whole thing about adaptations kind of leads this conversation. I'm going to start that again. I stuttered so many times.
It's okay.
Hold on. I think the whole thing of adaptation as well, it's great that you've sort of brought that up. It nicely segues onto the news section for this week. So yesterday, well, as of recording this episode, on Thursday, the information video for... No, hold on. On Wednesday, the information video for Fresh Folio has just come out, and as this episode goes live, the info pack will also have gone out at that point. So for those of you who don't know what Fresh Folio is...
What is it, Theo?
I'll tell you what it is, Kerryn.
Oh my god.
Fresh Folio is a chance for anyone both outside society and in the society currently at this uni to perform Shakespeare outside of the kind of usual show kind of setting. We're looking for people to perform monologues or duologues. If you want to showcase a small scene from a Shakespeare play, if you have a concept in mind to bid that scene from that play for a potential show, you can do that. If you want to do a sonnet because you want to, why not do it? Or if you want to have a go at writing, for writing some original piece inspired by Shakespeare or Shakespeare's contemporaries, you can do that. We'll be performing in Medicine on the 20th of March, but we're looking for people to submit ideas to us. We have Bernice Saunders as our dramaturg, who is there to kind of help you if you need it to cut your script, understand the language, help fully form your idea. She's going to be on hand throughout the submission process, and if your piece gets accepted, helping you to kind of conceptualize it and fully realize the potential of your work. There's so much that's sort of going on with Fresh Folio. It's new to Shakespeare Society. We're looking for literally anyone and everyone to get involved. So if you think it's something you'd be interested in, either submitting work or performing, would be great to see you along.
Now I'm interested. God
Nice.
damn it.
Nice.
I'm too busy, Theo. Why did you get me?
So I think that's all we have time for on today's episode. So thank you very much for being... I know, so sad. Thank you very much for being my special guest, Kerryn.
The pleasure is all mine, Theo. Thank you for having me.
Incredible stuff. Thank you very much for tuning into this episode of Bard Times. I've been your host, Theo Dudridge, and in the words of the Bard himself, give me an ounce of civet, good apothecary to sweeten my imagination. Take care, everyone.
Take care.